So, backstories. Backstories are an important thing for a lot of different reasons, but the main thing is it's what people think about most before starting a D&D or TTRPG campaign. See, a backstory is kind of like the context of your character, but more importantly, it's also what helps you create what you want at the table. A lot of people will go through the mechanics, the classes, whatever it is that your favorite TTRPG provides. However, when they're looking at those things, they're looking at something that interests them so that they can either tie it into the backstory they've already created or tie the backstory into the mechanics. It's integral to the characters, but so many people misunderstand what you're supposed to do with this. And honestly, I think a large reason for this is how much people rely on live plays. Now don't get me wrong, I love live plays, but I think Critical Role, Dimension 20, The Adventure Zone, and well, actually, honestly, mostly Critical Role, have done a lot of damage to what people consider when it comes to backstory. See, in those live plays, we have long, super reaching, overarching campaigns where the backstory plays in important parts to the story beats for every single character. And because of this, and the fact that it is a streamed game, so it must be entertaining in one fashion or another, people tend to go out of their ways to keep their backstories a secret. And don't get me wrong, having secrets and lies in your backstory is honestly a great method, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But the fact that everybody seems to want to do this these days does cause some issues. There's nothing wrong with secrets in your backstories, but you have to understand why they're there. A lot of people look at things like Ford in Critical Role Campaign 2 and his entire secret identity, or they look at Mollymuck not knowing anything about his backstory, or they look at different characters like Caleb who had a very dark backstory. The point was, there was all these cool moments that came from revealing the secrets of the backstories. But I honestly think that a lot of people just throw in secrets without realizing why they should be there in the first place. Like I mentioned earlier, backstories provide context to the character. And yes, this could go a few different ways. Let's say you're playing a fighter and you used to be a soldier. Well, your backstory is obviously informing why your character is a fighter and why they have the skills that they have, which is great. That's totally fine. But the point of the backstory is really to provide motivation. That's the thing that I see a lot of people miss. They will add these secrets, these unique elements, these plot twists, when the whole point of a backstory is to provide the motivation for the story moving forward. Consider it like this. If you have a character who just has no backstory, not just you haven't written it down or you haven't told anybody, but literally you have written nothing, it makes it really difficult to move forward into the story. Anytime that a dangerous event happens, many times in our own lives, we will reflect on our past. Should a dangerous thing happen in front of me, my brain will automatically think about situations I've been in that are similar to this in order to determine how I should react to this. But a character with zero backstory is going to look at that situation, and it's going to be really difficult to figure out why your character is going to take the call to action, the call to adventure. If there's a dangerous situation there and there's no reason in your non-existent backstory to pursue that adventure, then it kind of just makes you wonder why your character would put themselves in danger in the first place.
I just don't know what we're doing anymore.
What do you mean?
I don't know what we're doing. I don't know why we're doing it. I don't know. I've just been thinking about it. I mean, what is the point of our lives?
Well, that's a very deep question.
Because let's be honest, in almost all TTRPGs, there's danger. That's the point. Whether it is a TTRPG that focuses specifically on drama and romantic relationships, there's still danger in pursuing those relationships and you might harm your social standing. Or if it's a combat-based TTRPG, same thing, only now you're literally almost sacrificing your life, if not actually sacrificing your life. So not having the context for why you're going to do that is seriously hampering everything that you're doing. So here's what I would suggest. The important thing to remember is that yes, the backstory is context, but you don't necessarily have to have all the answers in the beginning. I've talked a lot of times before in which I think that backstories are best created on the fly. At least that is how I personally prefer to do them. This doesn't mean blindsiding your DM by any means. Oftentimes it's better to consider the bare minimum for a backstory. Leave the vagueness and basicness of it, so that later in the game, when you decide that you want your character to make a core decision, now you have more space to write into your backstory why your character would make that decision. Did you nearly sacrifice yourself to save one of the other party characters, despite the fact that up until this point you seemed like a very selfish individual? Well, now you can consider why you would have done that. And with your very vague backstory, you could start to fill in the details and write in why your character has made that decision. Now, I can already tell that there are going to be a lot of people in the comments confused about this concept, because wouldn't you technically be blindsiding your DM at this point? Yeah, pretty much. I've yet to have a DM that was super enthused by this method, because I would constantly just surprise them. We could be 10, 15 sessions into the campaign, and I would still be coming up with new details about my backstory, which I would then message to them after the session. And I thankfully have very flexible DMs, but that doesn't mean that you necessarily will. So if you don't have this ability and the DM really needs to have the details beforehand to create an in-depth world for your character, what do? Well, I would just ask yourself 3 simple questions. What has my character experienced in the past that they would desperately love to never experience again? What does your character want to experience again? What is a new experience that your character wants to see someday? These 3 questions do a few simple things. First of all, the first question makes sure that you know what your character wants to avoid, whether it was the death of a loved one or a tragic circumstance they experienced. Now, if they see a parallel in the adventure in front of them, you have some context of how they're going to react to that situation, making it far more interesting. Then 2, if you consider what your character wants to experience again, you can understand some of the things that are going to motivate them. Perhaps that loss of a loved one really makes them want to experience love again. And so they'll be looking at the other party members as part of their family. Or maybe they've experienced something like true peace and paradise. They were temporarily taken to the absolute version of heaven in your world and now brought back. And now they're desperate to try and achieve that again by dying in battle or something similar. But the third one's interesting. What is something new that your character wants to experience? Because this doesn't have to be something that they should experience. It could be something as simple as, I want to experience love for the first time, and that's great. But it could also be something as harmful as, I want to experience true revenge. I want to experience harming my mortal enemy in ways they will never recover from. And that's not necessarily something your character should be able to achieve. I mean, sure, maybe they do, but we all know the old saying, revenge is a dish best served cold. And so maybe it's better for them to learn that they shouldn't pursue this. Having this interesting dichotomy of knowing what they want, but also what they have previously experienced, helps create so much more of a fleshed out character. Backstory is great, don't get me wrong. Considering what your character has gone through is amazing for the future of your game. But you also have to take a step back and consider why you would create a backstory in the first place. It's context for the adventure ahead. The backstory is supposed to be the bare foundation. It's really just supposed to be what's there in front of you, but it is not the story that needs to be told. The most interesting things should always be further ahead of your character. They should not be behind you already, or else what's the point in playing in the adventure in the first place? There should be room for your character to grow, to expand, and if you've already put all of their growth in their backstory, I mean, that character can work, don't get me wrong, but it's going to be much more difficult and more likely not as exciting. So consider those facts and develop the character that you want to play in 3 dimensions by asking yourself those questions and knowing that the backstory is there for a reason. It's not just there to tell a cool story without having to make any dice rolls. It's so much more important to that. And honestly, I think it's something that's really worth exploring. If you like this video or any of the channel stuff, you may have noticed that there's some new stuff on the channel. I actually have done an entire channel rebrand with the help of my team, and they've worked incredibly hard on this, as well as my wife behind the camera. Say hello, wife.
Of the team.
You are a part of the team, yes. You are most of the team, actually. I wanted to call you out specifically because you did a lot of help.
Mom.
Anyways, we've done a full channel rebrand, and I'm actually probably doing a live stream right now. It depends on when you're watching this, but for today, I'm going to be doing a stream going over all of the rebrand of the channel itself, as well as unveiling a new channel that I'm very excited about. And if you don't see any stream on this right now, but it's still Friday, you should probably go check the other stream. Should probably go check if the other stream is good. It'll be in the community tab. Go check the community tab if you want to find out what's going on. Anyways, thank you guys so much and have a wonderful day. Go out into the world, make it your own. Bye-bye. That was an awkward ending. Pretty on brand though.